The Fourth Way by P.D. Ouspensky, Chapter 10. And let me just remind you as I read this that the questions are always put forth by Ouspensky and the answers are given by Gurdjieff. So, question. I do not understand the distinction between what one can and what one cannot do. Why is it that one can struggle with negative emotions, but one cannot make oneself awake? Answer. Sleep is the form or the level of our being. One can do something with the help of the system if the way is shown, but being awake indicates the level of being itself. So all this struggle with negative emotions, trying to stop unnecessary thoughts, trying to remember oneself, all this leads you to awakening, but you cannot awake before you awake. Question. But is it their doing when people try to become conscious? Answer. Yes. Then one sees that one cannot. In trying to become conscious, all man's work is his own. It is only in this system that you are told clearly that you can do nothing. All the other systems begin with doing in one sense or another. For they say, do this or do that. This system is different. It is esoteric teaching. But in it, you can begin in the conditions of ordinary life. It is not necessary to go to a closed school or to a monastery. Because of that, it's particularly necessary to understand, first of all, that one cannot do anything, and that the only thing one can start to do is trying to remember oneself, understanding the one and practicing the other. Question. I thought perhaps we ought not to take this idea that we cannot do too literally? Answer. No, quite literally. Only this refers to people who are not connected with any teaching. When one begins to study certain teachings or systems, which give school methods, one has to try to do certain things. In the work we have to do, for if we do not try to do, nothing will happen. We have to do, from the beginning, not much, but very definite things. If you cannot identify it, is already the beginning of doing. If you cannot identify it, is already the beginning of doing. If you can refrain from talk when you have an inclination to talk, that is already doing. Doing begins with going against the current. First in yourself, in personal things. You can try to remember yourself, and then when you remember to remember yourself, you can get certain results, and you will see that you can do more things, but all with regard to yourself. You will be able to do something about negative emotions, for instance, and to think in a new way. But outside you, things will continue to happen. Question. Would you say that one way of beginning to do would be to alter things in oneself so that things happen differently? Answer. It is necessary once more to divide people into categories. Men 1, 2, and 3 can do nothing. In their case, everything happens. If they do good things, it means they cannot do bad things. If they do bad things, it means they cannot do good things. One thing is no better than any other in that sense, because it is all mechanical. But when one begins to work, when one enters a school of any level, one already has to learn to do. As I said, one has to begin with oneself, to know oneself, to study oneself, try to eliminate certain things, try to create control over certain things, and so on. Question. Have we got to observe how we react? Answer. Observing is always useful, but we always react in the same way. We only have 5 or 6 ways of reacting. Only certain things happen to us, and we react in the same way to them. But if we try to do all that is advised and not do all that we are advised to refrain from doing, things will change in the right way, and one day, quite unexpectedly, we will be able to do something we could not have done before. Question: can we direct things to happen to us? Answer: if we direct things in ourselves, if nothing unnecessary happens in us, we shall begin to be able to control things that happen from outside. But first of all, we must control things in ourselves. So long as things are left to happen in ourselves, we cannot control anything outside. How can it be otherwise? One eye decides to control things, but instead all its attention will be occupied with things that happen in us and outside of us. Question: if man can do nothing, does it follow that all he can do is control his own mental reactions to events outside his control? Answer: quite right. That is the beginning. If he learns to control his reactions, then after some time he will find that he can control more and more, and later it may happen that he will be able to control, again not all, for there is a very large gradation, but certain external events. But certain other external events cannot be controlled because they are of a different size. Question: if I wish to obtain a particular result and fail, and if I then do the thing differently, will the results still be the same in spite of my effort? Answer: you must not deceive yourself. If you do something and the result corresponds to your expectations, it is simply luck, chance. That is all. And in some cases, you may do something entirely different and still have the same result. Question: it seems that one is caught up in a vicious circle. Answer: certainly one is caught, and the system is the way out of this vicious circle. For in ordinary conditions of life, one cannot get out. Question: could you say a little more about the effort to get out of that circle? Answer: if you take all that is given in the right way and work with sufficient effort, the school or the system, call it what you like, will give you this possibility of getting out. There is no way out without school and without knowledge. Again, if you get the knowledge and do not make efforts, it will be equally useless. When one is in a school, one is made to do, because one cannot make oneself, one cannot create sufficient force. But if one puts oneself in different conditions, it will produce certain results. School is necessary because it is the conductor of neutralizing force. Otherwise, one may have desire, one may make efforts, but one would not know how to start. It seems simple, but it is not simple. Question: what would be the active and passive forces in this case? Answer: life can be taken as an active force, and the passive force, I would say, is inertia, habits in all that happens. Question: how can you distinguish between an effort that is mechanical and an effort that is not? Answer: there is no need to distinguish. Make efforts and results will show. Question: do you mean that all I have really done in my life so far is to change one form of sleep for another? Answer: it changed itself. You did not even do that. In life, one has no control. But in the work, one can acquire control. In the work, there can be an escape from the state where one can do nothing and things happen. Without the work, there is no escape. A certain illusion of control is provided in life by ordinary education, but if circumstances change, it all disappears. Question: then will you tell me, please, what is the chief thing that is holding me back from escaping? Answer: mechanicalness. In yourself, things continue to happen, things over which you should have control, but you have not acquired control. There are things in us which can and should be mechanical, such as physiological processes and things like that. And there are things over which one must acquire as much control as we can, because they keep us from awakening. You do not realize to what an extent one thing in us is connected with another. Everything is connected. You cannot do or say or even think anything out of the general line of things that happen. You cannot do or say or even think anything out of the general line of things that happen. Our four centers, intellectual, emotional, moving, and instinctive, are so coordinated that one movement in one center immediately produces a corresponding movement in another center. Certain movements or certain postures are connected with certain thoughts. Certain thoughts are connected with certain feelings, sensations, emotions. Everything is connected. Such as we are, with all the will that we can concentrate, we can acquire some degree of control over one center, but only one, and even that for only a short period of time. But other centers will go on by themselves and will immediately corrupt the center that we want to control and bring it again to the mechanical reaction. Suppose I know all that I should know, and suppose I decide to think in a new way. I begin to think in a new way, but sit in the ordinary posture, or smoke a cigarette in the usual way, and I again find myself in the old thoughts. It is the same with emotions. One decides to feel in a new way about something, and then one thinks in the old way, and so negative emotions come again as before without control. So, in order to change, we must change things in all four centers at the same time. And this is impossible since we have no will to control four centers. In school, there are special methods for attaining this control, but without a school, it cannot be done. On the whole, our machine is very cleverly thought out. From one point of view, it has wonderful possibilities of development. But from another point of view, this development is made very difficult. You will understand why it is made like that when you finally realize what consciousness and will mean. And then you will understand that neither consciousness nor will can develop mechanically. Every small thing has to be developed by struggle. Otherwise, it would not be consciousness or will. It has to be made difficult. Question: I feel that if I had to do everything instead of relying on accidents, nothing would happen to me at all, for my will is too weak. Answer: not doing is in itself a kind of doing, but at the same time, you touch here a very interesting question. When you get control, fewer and fewer things will happen, and you will have to do even small things because they will not happen to you. But this is probably very far. Question: would you say that the sense of responsibility that one ought to do something useful in the world is imagination, since you say we cannot do? Answer: it may be imagination or imitation, or it may be right. But in that case, you must consider what and how. And how is more important than what. Most people think about what to do, but not how. Often the things they decide to do are impossible, like stopping wars and other such things. Question: if we try to be conscious and try to see things how they really are, would it change our situation so that things do not happen to us, but we do things as we wish to do them? Answer: certainly. This is the aim, but a very far aim. You see, first of all, here is a wrong use of the word us. You must remember that when it was said that things happen to all people and that people cannot do anything, but referred to ordinary conditions in ordinary life, what is called a normal life. But in this work, we are trying to get out of this normal life, so we must do. Only we must first learn what we can do, because in our present conditions, many things will continue to happen. But in certain things, we already have a choice. We can show our preference, our will, as much as we can have will. So us cannot be used in the same way as before. But you must understand that at first, the difference is not between doing and not doing, but between trying to do and trying to understand. And at present, all your energy must be concentrated on trying to understand. What you can try to do has been explained. We are trying to find things we can control in ourselves, and if we work on them, we will acquire control. This is all the doing that is possible at the moment.